What? What's the problem? What's the problem now?
Fuck yeah, I'll wear my glasses. I can't see.
Oh
I can't
God.
read. I can't read without them.
Take them on and off like put them on and off like a librarian.
No, because with headphones, that's annoying. All right, go ahead.
What's going on, everyone? This is Jake and Brennan from the SideCats podcast. You're listening to the SideCats podcast. This is the SideCats podcast. Do you know this is the SideCats podcast, Brandon?
I mean, yeah, now I know. Thank you so much for
You're
letting
welcome.
me know what it is.
Just in case if you ended up here and you're like, whoa, what is this? Now you know.
SideCats podcast.
So recently we haven't recorded a podcast because laziness and school.
You've been busy.
Yeah, we'll
I've
chalk
been
it up
lazy.
to that. But recently, this article titled 5 Ways Genshin Impact is Better Than Breath of the Wild was released by Digital Trends writer Tom Caswell. I think he works for them. I don't know if he's just a contributor.
Probably works for them.
Regardless. Now, obviously, we've both played Breath of the Wild, and we've both played Genshin Impact. You've played it more than me. It's a new-ish release by, a month at this point? 2-3 weeks at this point?
Yeah, but I know a lot of people have been playing it longer than it's been.
Yeah,
out.
I think it had some beta runs or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, 5 ways Breath of the Wild, or Genshin Impact is better than Breath of the Wild. Now, Breath of the Wild is arguably the greatest game ever made. If not one of the. Like, I if there was a list of the top 5 games, like greatest games ever made, Breath of the Wild is easily in there, right? Like, that's kind of hard to debate.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I mean, I'm not gonna just throw out like greatest game of all time because I mean, there's a lot of shit I haven't played, but I mean, it's definitely up there.
That's true.
Yeah, but like it's like rated out of like all the ratings. it's
one of the highest rated of all time.
Yeah, I think it is the highest, isn't it? Behind
I think it's up there,
right in front of another Zelda.
Yeah, I think not Twilight Princess. Oh,
Ocarina of Time.
Thank you, Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Those two, and then I think a Tony Hawk game is like in top 5 also. I think Pro Skater 2 maybe.
Oh hell yeah!
I think Pro Skater 2, maybe Underground 2. I can't remember exactly. But regardless,
cool.
Breath of the Wild is hard to deny one of the greatest games of all time.
It's great.
Then Genshin Impact, it's really good too. You've put a lot of time into it. How would you, in a short summary, how would you even describe Genshin?
I wouldn't call it Breath of the Wild knockoff because it's good in its own right in different places. Like the whole like character leveling system and like weapon progression and stuff like that is far better than Zelda, like a million times better because it doesn't exist.
Thank you. Yeah,
because it doesn't exist in Zelda. Yep. So you feel like you're progressing your characters a lot more than in Zelda, and you have like a reason to like get stronger stuff. Like if you're good in Zelda, you can beat anything. But in Genshin, if you aren't, you'll die. Like that's just basically it. So I mean, the game has more of like a character progression focus than Zelda. So.
Right. And I think one of the core differences also is one is a live service game and one is just a RPG. Obviously, the live service is Genshin Impact, and the RPG. They're both RPGs, to be fair, but Zelda is just a single-player story RPG. Yeah. So, basically, these two are very hard to compare, even though Genshin Impact does take a lot of influence from Breath of the Wild, which, understandably, it comes off really smart, and it's really well done in Genshin. And the influences are very obvious, almost to a fault. It's kind of like, okay, that's a little on the nose, but
kind of
regardless,
sometimes.
Yeah, the games are still hard to compare because just of the core differences of a 4-character you choose from live service game. They're just kind of hard to compare.
Yeah.
That didn't stop Tom, though, Tom
Yeah,
gave us 5 key points of why why Genshin Impact is better than Breath of the Wild.
Tom.
So we'll just start from the top. And his first point: there's more to the story.
If you get to it.
Yeah, I'll read the first paragraph without reading his whole article, but a core trait of Breath of the Wild was also its curse. Its story was incredibly simplistic. Link wakes up 100 years after 100 years and must obtain the power of 4 divine beasts to rid the land of Calamity Ganon. The player was able to explore and discover Hyrule at their leisure, seeking out the 4 champions of each tribe in any way they see fit.
Yeah,
that is a very dulled down way to explain how Breath of the Wild works. You can beat the game without doing anything but fighting the final boss. It is hard to do that, but you are completely able to do that. And I think saying that there's more story to Genshin, which we'll talk about in a second how bad it is, it's kind of hard to just null down Zelda into a very simplistic explanation.
I mean, he did like what you could do to almost anything. Like you can go ahead and do that almost about any game you've ever played. Like, just take the key points of the game and then just say them, and then it's like, oh.
Yeah, it's like saying Minecraft
boring.
Minecraft is incredibly simplistic story.
Like, yeah, you get stuff and then get to the Ender Dragon and kill it. Like, that's basically the game. But at the same time, I mean, I don't think. I mean, it kind of is a little like he nailed it on the head, of course. But right. At the same time,
that is what it is. But that's not going through the
all side missions, all the everything.
Yeah, the caveats of this is a massive world to explore in your own way, in your own pattern, and you don't have to do all of it to finish the game.
Yeah, there's a sense of freedom to the game,
Yeah, there's a sense of freedom. That's a good way to put it. And for me, that does not exist in Genshin Impact due to there's more story, which is true. But the story is
it's good.
Horrible. It is not good. I couldn't tell you anything of interest that has happened so far in that game. You've played more than me, and you can tell me if it's gotten better than that or better as you go. But man, that is a button mashing skip fest anytime there's a cutscene.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do. I kind of understand what's going on. Like, I can tell you like the whole first act, kind of, but I'm not going to. I mean, it's unless you ask for it, I will, of course.
No,
because it's kind of important to what we're talking about. It kind of is what we're talking about. But I mean, the whole thing with the story of Genshin, though, if I'm going to say anything to this topic, is that sure, there's story to it, but if you don't like go and explore, you can't do it. This game is continually locking you out of missions by adventure level. Right. So it's not like you can just play through the story. If that was the case, I'd be like, sure, there's more of a story there, because there actually is. Because I know that I'm I don't even think I'm like halfway down the story. I'm not fully aware of how long the game actually is, but I know you can get up to like adventure rank like 50, I think.
Right. What are you even at?
I'm at 28.
I think I'm at 16 or 17.
I'm at 28. I played the crap out of this game, but I think I've hit a point where I'm like, I think I'm like out of new stuff to do in terms of having to level up my like character. So it's like I'm kind of finding it hard to have to level up again, because I'm in that situation. I'm locked out of a mission because it's level adventure rank 29 for me to do the next.
That's a core gameplay mission. That's not like a side thing. That is like the main story.
That's main mission. Yes, I've done all of the side missions I think I can up until now, and I still am not high enough to get to that mission yet. You have to walk around and do a bunch of other domains and stuff.
Yeah, the next point that they make is the world feels more alive, and I wouldn't even agree with that. that the world feels more alive comes at the criticism of Breath of the Wild had a lot of open land, and at times there wasn't a lot filling that open land.
It's all about Genshin too.
Yeah, but the thing with Genshin is it forces you out into these environments and scenarios that in Breath of the Wild you happen to stumble across. So because you can't advance the game and the main story, if you want to call it that,
right,
you have to go and do these other things. And it tells you, hey, there's this thing over here you need to go do. There's dailies over here to go do. But in Zelda, it's you happen to come across these places, and that builds the story that you're creating more. But so Genshin Impact, I wouldn't say the world feels more alive. I feel like they feel about the same. It's just Genshin forces you to go and see the various environments and various worlds. It forces you to do that out of necessity. You have to level up somehow to get to the core gameplay missions.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's just hard to say that the world feels more alive. Do you think the world feels more alive? Do you think it feels more? I don't even know what.
I think how they kept the game from like being like boring in terms of walking around and stuff is that they just sprinkled enemies everywhere. Like they just sprinkled a shit ton of like enemy camps in places. But the game does have its moments where you're walking for a long time and you don't run into anything.
Right.
And like there's a bunch of islands in the game that are a fucking pain in the ass to like go to and traverse and stuff like that. So it's
would you say until you get there and then you set up one of those teleporter points, or you would say it's just hard to get there, like, period?
I mean, they did a pretty good job at putting the teleporter points like in spots that are pretty important. So I mean, I guess in that front, it's like, yeah, you got to get there at least once before you can just fast travel there. You don't expect to just get there. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, both games have had their instances of being a little too big for its own good, in my opinion. Like, it's like,
yeah, and I don't necessarily
like awesome.
have a problem with that, though.
Yeah, it's like I'm glad that there's a huge world for me to explore. Yay. But I don't want to have to walk for 20 minutes not doing anything to get to where I want to go. So
that's something I would give credit to Genshin in, that there's a lot of teleporter points to go and set up, and it tells you where those are. Now that happens to become shrines in Zelda. Those act as teleporter points. But sometimes I do wish there was a few more teleporter places I could teleport to.
Yep.
But as you play the game and get more shrines, it becomes easier to get around a little bit.
The game does have the benefit of having the plateaus, which like you can go to, and you can get to pretty much almost anywhere if you can get to like the right one, because it spawns you up high, so then you could just jump off.
And I end up doing that. And Rivali's Gale is one of my favorite things in any video game is Rivali's Gale, the ability to get a gust of wind, fly up, and parachute somewhere. Right. That's one of my favorite mechanics, features in any video game ever. I love that thing, and I think that makes traversing a little easier and a little more scenic in a way. Like, you're up high, you're flying around. Sometimes you'll see things that, oh, I've never seen that before, and then you can dip off into. So yeah, saying the world feels more alive, I think, is a tricky way of saying it forces you to explore the world more.
Yeah, it's just the type of game, honestly.
Yeah. So. And I don't know if I fault Genshin for doing that. No, it is a little sneaky for them to be like, here, go explore our world, and you can't play the main game until you do.
It's free.
I don't know if exactly. It's a free game, so
they can get away with anything.
Yeah, any criticisms can kind of be boiled down to it's just a free game. It's a really good free game, one of the best I've ever played for sure. Mm-hmm. But the comparison still to Breath of the Wild, a little rough. The next point made is Genshin Impact has more interesting powers.
Yep. And
this is a weird one for me, because it's assuming that the abilities that each character has are its powers, and Link's bomb and time freeze. I have terrible with the names. Time freeze, the water block thing. Yeah, I guess the powers are better in Genshin.
I wouldn't say they're better. There's just more.
I think there's just more. Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're better. because honestly,
I guess it does say more
from Breath of
interesting
the Wild
powers.
still. Like even those 4 divine beast powers are basically in the game. Like the shield, Noelle's a character in there. Her E literally just gives you a shield. That's about it.
And that's the same as
and
the Goron.
Your main character's Q at the beginning of the game is just Rivali's Veil, basically, but it doesn't pick you up. Like there's no actual thing in the game that does that, unless like you pick up this.
It picks up the enemies.
Yeah. It picks them up. So it's just there's those things in this game. So it has the same abilities as Breath of the Wild, and then more. So he's not. I guess he's
not wrong.
He's not wrong, but he's not completely
comparison.
right. Yeah. They're not necessarily more interesting. There's just more. So
yeah, it's just more. That's a good way to put it. It's just more.
I don't see like them being more interesting. It's just
here's the thing that he does point out: the abilities and the elemental characters. Each character has a different element that they are specific to.
Yep.
They are required to solve certain puzzles around the map, whereas in Zelda, you have all those powers. Like the bomb, you need to blow up a cave sometimes to find a shrine.
Yep.
That for me is one of the weaker parts of Genshin, having to switch to a specific character that you may not have at your party at the time, just to shoot like 2 fire arrows at a little totem to unlock this puzzle. That's one of the weaker parts of Genshin, and I think that hurts it more than helps it. Also the potential of not have, I guess you always are gonna have the characters, but own the characters, but not having them in your party sometimes, it's annoying to sometimes switch to them just to do one specific thing. And I feel like that works in Zelda's favor of you always have these abilities past like an hour in the game. I think you get them all, but you're always going to have these abilities, and it's easy to switch to them real fast just to do one simple puzzle.
Yeah, no, I've run into that a ton of times where I'm just like, well, I guess I have to hit escape, party menu, switch it up, And
it's not quick either.
It isn't quick. If there was like a quick party switch, then that problem's instantly fixed. Like if like you just like press like K and it just switches to your party too if you're not in combat, like that would be perfect, honestly.
And it's not like you could just have one of each. You can have one of each elemental type.
Yeah.
But it works in your favor to not do that, and sometimes mix and match, have 2 of one and 2 different others, and not have any of like a fire type. Sometimes it benefits you not to have just one of each, even though you can't. But
it persuades you into trying out different groups of characters, which is awesome. But at the same time,
hurts itself in the end.
Yeah, just for the mere fact that it takes a little bit to switch out characters, and it's kind of a nuisance sometimes.
Right.
Like, and then they kind of layer on top of that. If I'm gonna be honest, later on, like they add in an ability to like switch your main character's like element.
Right.
But to do that, you like can't do it on like the fly. You have to like go to a shrine and like do it and switch, and then you'll find yourself like without the right, like I don't have another wind character, like my main character is the only one, so it's just like
he might be the only one in the game.
No, he's not. No,
he's not.
Yeah, no, there's a few others.
But to get them,
one,
but to get them, you'd have to
spend money.
Potentially spend money, which it's a free game, so there's always gonna be a model like that. But yeah, it's just a slippery slope saying there's more interesting powers, and I think this conversation like we're having now, it's going to lead to a conversation that's a slippery slope.
It's always a slippery slope. So
yeah, it's a tough comparison, and I keep coming back to this, but it is tough to compare these two games where one game is pulling so much from the other. You start to compare everything else, even the stuff that it wasn't pulled. It's just hard to compare these two. It really is. But we'll continue breaking down his comparison.
We'll continue to compare the two.
Yeah, really. It's like, I mean, everyone does it. Everyone compares games like this, but it's just hard to. His next point is it's a deep RPG. Link had some light role-playing mechanics to play around with in Breath of the Wild, such as different armors that modified certain characteristics, outfit modification, However, it's just a fraction of the RPG elements at work in Genshin Impact. Characters have experience levels and skill trees. They can improve their elements from items they pick up in the world, or visit a blacksmith to create new ones. They can equip a stat modifier to make for a more offensive or defensive fighter, tweak their elemental abilities to be stronger, or require faster cooldowns. Ooh, that is that's a lot.
It is a lot.
I don't know where to start with this one. Saying it's a deep RPG. Where do we even start with this one?
I think it's just the character leveling. That's mainly it. Because like,
do you think that's better? Like, do you think Genshin does RPG stuff like that better?
Just considering that the Legend of Zelda kind of lacks a little bit in that front. Like,
it lacks like character leveling, not armor leveling.
There's like zero like character leveling. There's like just different clothing. Like that's that's the game's like not leveling,
said clothing which you can upgrade.
Yeah.
Through parts and shit like that.
Yeah. Visiting fairy shrines or
the fairy fountains.
Yeah. You do that. I mean, but it's like that's fine. That's cool. You can kind of like mix and match, but if you have more of the same thing on it, gets more of a stronger boost, right? If I remember, it's been a little bit
in
since
Zelda.
I played Zelda. Yeah.
What do you mean? If you have like two,
like you can have like the bandana on, so you climb faster, but you can also have like the stealth like outfit on at the same time, right? Yeah.
And there's a two, like if you have two of the same, so like I could have a bandana and pants that make me climb faster. There's like two that will max out that stat boost. If you have three of the same, you're losing one. So like it's smart to have like two things that guard you from fire burning plus a guardian defense up or guardian attack up, for example. And you can level up those clothing items with parts you find around the world and whatnot.
Yeah, and then it has the game relies a lot more on food and
Zelda?
The consumption of food.
Yes.
And getting buffs and stuff like that from those things. While Genshin does also have that, and it's practically the same.
But not necessary. I don't feel like I ever really need to eat.
I do not ever eat because I have a character that heals me. So it's like you don't ever need to do it. But I mean, if we're saying which one's more of an RPG, I'm gonna go Genshin. So because it has character leveling, weapon leveling.
It has more RPG elements, not better in my opinion. It doesn't have better RPG elements. It just has more.
I'd say these ones are better.
I don't know.
I think they're better because
I don't know.
It gives you the opportunity to make builds. I guess that's true. I don't come from anything, but I've played a lot of games like Destiny where you put fucking mods on pieces of armor and you build around a certain thing so that if you're using like a certain subclass, that damage from that subclass gets more, the weapons you use get more, you get more items from certain enemies that help for the weapons and subclass you're using. So it's like if you can build a group with a bunch of good artifacts and weapons, you're basically great. Like that's kind of what I'm rolling on right now. So I think Genshin's just got it like right on the money in terms of like how you should level up your character. It's a lot because we've talked about it, and the first day we were playing it, there was like 8 different currencies thrown at you at once. Yeah, and you're like, it's so confused.
Has like it's like more of a MMO. It's closer to like MMO than it's closer to Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Put it, I think
it definitely is that because it has like stuff for leveling up, and then money for buying the things you need to level up, and then run around and get all the different items, and then there's currencies to unlock new items, and then it's a lot. But if once you learn it, it's pretty straightforward. Like if you can learn all the terms and whatnot, or even put in your own terminology in places, if it works for you, it doesn't matter. But I think it's just way more engaging to like continually look at your character's level and be like, all right, I need to fix this. I can level up this, and this. So
Right.
it's just a lot. It's a lot more. It feels a lot more personal, I guess I would say, because it caters to your playstyle. So
I guess it's a way to make the characters that everyone's gonna have more personal with these builds and whatnot.
Yep.
This kind of is blending into the final point they make of numerous quality of life improvements, like weapons not breaking, having to memorize recipes, just shit like that. And the thing is, for me, bouncing off the RPG elements also, I don't think Genshin does the elements that are in Breath of the Wild, RPG-wise. I don't think it does those things better. I don't think the cooking and need of food and buffs through food and shit like that, I don't think Genshin does better. In the time I played, maybe I didn't play it enough, but there is almost no difficulty scaling. I never really felt pressured, apart from like one time where I was doing something that was way out of my level range. I never felt I needed to cook something for buffs, or I didn't have a good enough build, and I was just like pretty casually playing. I wasn't trying to make really crazy connections with characters or builds or items or whatever. I felt like the difficulty was pretty flat, not much of a rise or curve or dip or anything. It felt pretty flat, pretty linear to me. So I think the limited amount of RPG elements in Breath of the Wild were utilized better.
It caters to a person that's not really into that type of stuff.
I guess so.
It's
just felt
there,
like,
but it's not shoving it down your throat like Genshin is.
I think and I also wouldn't agree with the quality of life improvements. This is bouncing off the food, remembering recipes, and
the quality of life is way better in Zelda.
I wouldn't mind maybe having a recipe book in Zelda to be like, oh, you just need this, this, and this to make it.
Yeah, I'm surprised
I wouldn't mind that, but without it, it kind of felt like
I know this. It's because
what do you mean?
It's like my memory. I've learned this.
Oh yeah, it's
trial and error.
It feels like I'm leveling up when I'm playing Zelda, if that makes sense. And Genshin, so. It feels like I'm leveling up characters. Like I feel like I'm leveling up. Be like, okay, so this boss fights like this. He does this and this. I could use this and this to make this fight easier, and I can also cook this thing that requires these things to make it this.
And wear this armor.
Yeah, and wear this armor. But in Genshin, it's just like, oh, you got this thing, you got this thing, you got this thing. Here's all this shit. Take all this stuff and use all this money, and then go do stuff or whatever, and then you'll figure it out. And then I don't know. It just felt like Breath of the Wild was more refined, and Genshin wanted to be an MMO, but maybe rolled back a little bit into just more of a single player RPG. There is multiplayer elements, they're dog shit, but it felt more like an MMO that never really made it there.
And honestly, it would have been way worse if it was an MMO. I already know it. They would have focused. They would have had to focus way more on the multiplayer aspect, and it would have
potentially,
and it would have pulled from almost them putting like any time into anything else like crucial. Probably
potentially,
like
but it still feels. Would you agree that it feels closer to an MMO than it does Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. It better. Like with all the leveling and stuff like that, it feels way more like that. But
do you wish Zelda had a leveling system, or like you could level up Link, put points into a skill tree?
Maybe a skill tree would be nice, but I don't think leveling is necessary. Maybe make your abilities a little stronger, or
you can do that like one time. Each ability can be leveled up.
Yeah, it's like an enhancement by the little girl, right?
Yeah, I can't remember her name. Yeah, it's like bomb plus or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's just pluses on everything. I think.
It's not like a drastic
stasis time and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not drastic or anything.
Yeah, but I wish there were it was a little bit more. Like I'm completely fine with what Zelda has. I'm in no way saying that's bad because it's not. But
I really think it's one of the. I really think it's like the best game ever made. I really do think that.
It's great. It is good.
Like that, like the only game that I would compete with that is Minecraft. Honestly, like those two are like the top. Like those are the best made games in my opinion. And my opinion is right. So those are the best two made games.
All right. Well, then that looks like that's that, guys. That's it.
So
all we have
yeah,
time for.
If you want to read this article, it'll be in the description. Like we said, it's hard to compare these two games. So it feels like almost they're
not the same, but they're not too different.
No, Genshin is a Breath of the Wild clone with a lot of added shit to it. It's a little too much added shit. I wish it would have refined some of the stuff that it has in there because it's good, but I wish it was a little more refined instead of more. Less is always more for me.
Yeah, I mean,
so
like I said, I'm into that whole like just throw shit at me and I'll figure it out type deal. That's my whole niche. So.
I just wish there was more payoff for that though. Maybe there is. There
totally is.
Maybe there was like 70 hours in it where it's like, oh my god, all this leaves and feathers I've been collecting to make.
If you give the game time and like you collect the stuff you need and everything, like your party will grow and be so strong. Like I've joined you and you've seen me shit on things.
Yeah, but I think that's just natural progression though. I don't think that I wouldn't get if I just played more. I think I would get to that. I don't think I need to be focused on getting to that. I think just by playing, I'll get to that.
I focused on like certain leveling ups of like certain artifacts and stuff like that, and made parties. Like I have like two separate parties, but it's. I mean, you probably can, and like as the game goes, it kind of shows you what you need to do too, which is nice because not every person's played something like that. And it's probably being played by a lot more people that haven't played it since it is free. So,
yes, exactly.
So
this feels like a nice introduction game to RPGs, potentially an MMO like WoW or whatever. This feels like a nice introduction to that. But don't compare it to Breath of the Wild for me. Don't compare the two.
It's the best free game in my opinion.
It is definitely the best free game. Up there with Doritos Crash Course, this is a very good free game.
No, we can't.
Shout out.
That
was what a weird game that was, right? Like that was
weird. What do you mean? It was the best.
Did you ever play the second one? I think there was two.
There was a second one?
I think so.
What?
It was called Doritos Crash Course Harder.
Harder?
I don't know. All right, we're done.
I don't care.
We're done. Thank you for watching. We'll make another podcast sometime. This was just kind of a one-off. Probably more podcasts like this are going to happen than a regularly scheduled one.
We just honestly had feelings towards this topic, and we wanted to talk on them. So
I legitimately played Breath of the Wild for like 10 hours this past weekend.
Oh, that's
just
it?
So I could. Well, I'm not. I mean, 10 hours. That's probably a time. I don't have all the time in the world. 10 hours is a lot for me, and it might not even have been that, but it felt like it. Whatever. I played a lot of Breath of the Wild just to refresh my memory a little bit with the game, just so I could talk about this.
What other games are you playing, Jake?
Animal Crossing.
Okay.
And Overwatch.
Wow.
So nothing new. Literally nothing new. What are you playing?
Just a lot of Persona 5.
Cool.
That's about it. I've dumped 50 hours into it.
We don't play new games. What is wrong with us?
I've dumped 50 hours into it the past week.
And you're like a tenth of the way through.
Yeah, that game's long. I'm romancing my teacher right now, all right? Give me a break.
That's pretty hot.
It is kind of hot. I like I was reading, hold on, I just want to touch on this. I was reading an article about how to do it because there's a certain like thing of steps. And I was just like, this is too funny not to do. And it's like dating your teacher. There's kind of a blurry line here in quotations on whether this is good or not. So it's like the game itself knows. It's like, yeah, it's kind of fucked.
Kinda.
Yeah. She comes to your house and cleans like a maid. So it's great.
Wow. What a game, huh?
It's a good game.
No wonder Joker's in Smash.
He's great.
All right. Thank you for watching. Socials, everything you need to know in the description down below. That was a phenomenal rhyme. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next time.
Kill it again.